Did I do it right?
Yeah, you did it perfect. It's
Okay,
great.
awesome.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join me. Uh, just like to do these live calls with other investors and real estate professionals because in the course of these talks, I tend to ask the kind of questions that most likely a lot of your followers will ask, and then I'll post it on my wall, and it'll provide a lot of information. So we'll just jump
Awesome.
right into it, so I don't keep you on the phone too long. If you don't mind, where are you from, and how did you get into real estate? How did you become the short sale queen? How did you get going?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks for having me. Nicole Espinosa. I'm originally from Orlando, Florida, or Miami, but I lived in Orlando. I am now based out of Dallas, Texas. I moved here almost 11 years ago, and my first job I was started in REO, which is foreclosures, and I was working very closely with asset managers, and that's kind of how I got my foot in the door in this business. It was horrible job, but it really set the foundation for what I do now. I've kind of learned the ins and outs of how the banks worked and operated. And the first listing I had was a short sale. And so at the time, there were so many misconceptions about them, and people really didn't understand the process. They still don't. And so I was just it was something that it was a challenge. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try to figure this out. And I developed my process, and hundreds of transactions later, I've been doing it ever since. So how I became the short sale queen, consistency. People started locally, just saying, hey, refer it to the short sale queen, and kind of just embrace the nickname. So.
Awesome, awesome. So I guess as far as market, do you work all over the country? I actually watched earlier today to study up a little bit. I saw your podcast with Max Maxwell, so congratulations on that. I'm sure that didn't hurt business. But are you
No.
basically working all over the country for the most part?
Yeah, so we've always been hyper local, but we expanded nationwide back in March. So it feels like it's been a year. I mean, it's been a crazy couple months. But yeah, we work all over the nation. So we're in all different markets.
Awesome, cool, cool. So are you investing at all yourself at this point? I'm primarily a wholesaler, which is how I got turned on to Max Maxwell as well. I own a few units myself. But do you invest at all yourself right now, or are you primarily working with other investors to help them build?
So I don't. I'm so hyper focused on what we're doing and building this business that I really don't have time for anything else.
Yeah.
So even though I am a licensed realtor, I get asked all the time, like, "Oh, so do you do traditional? Do you work with buyers?" And I don't. And I believe that if you're going to be really good at something, you focus on one thing, and that's what me and my team do. So if there's any kind of other business, I refer it out, and I work very closely with investors. About 70% of my business comes from investors for referrals. The other 30% are from real estate agents that don't know how to do the short sale or want to. So.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. When I first started trying to get into investments, I obviously spoke to a lot of different realtors and investors, and most of them said the same thing, that if you want to get really good at one thing, that's a niche, obviously,
Yeah.
is what's going to serve you best than trying to, try to go really deep in one thing than trying to go wide in everything. So I can definitely relate to the thought there. I had some just general questions.
Sure.
Again, given that I'm a wholesaler, I'm interested to hear your perspective on certain aspects of short sales. When I first started kind of like studying wholesaling in general, a lot of the educational material came from kind of the '07, '08 when a lot of wholesalers blew up, then
Yeah.
started teaching. And back then, and I heard you kind of reiterate this on Max's podcast, I was always told that banks are going to want to work with you because they're not real estate companies. And at the end of the day, it's not really in their best interest to sit on a bunch of real estate assets.
Right.
However, in my experience recently, it just seems like a lot of the mortgage companies, I approach a lot of people in pre-foreclosure. It's usually a mess, so it's always a challenge to get through any deals. And I've
Right.
been able to, and actually most of the properties that I own were actually pre-foreclosures because they can be such great deals.
Yeah.
But I come across a lot of mortgage companies that just don't seem to really want to work with the sellers. They're just trying to get it to auction. In your perspective, is that just kind of a reflection of the market, given that back in '07, '08, it was more they were lucky if somebody's going to buy it, and now it's, people tend to look at it like you're lucky we would sell it to you in the first place. So I don't know if there's, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's a really common thing that people think, right? So I'm going to change your perspective. It's
Okay.
not, it has nothing to do with anything. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is it has nothing to do with the market. It has nothing to do with the circumstance, the asset, the loan, nothing. It has everything to do with the process. So if banks are seeming unwilling, it's because you haven't submitted what it needs to be done to be able to move it along. Honestly, the people that you're working with, they are getting paid like nothing. They could care less. They're working like 500 to 1,000 loans that they're servicing at a time, like each person's assigned. So if you didn't send in what's required where they can't move the file along, they're like, okay, next. So it's not a personal thing. And I get that a lot from clients where they're like, my lender just doesn't want anything to do with me, or they don't want to work with me. And I'm like, no, they really don't care about you. Like it's not that, you're not that important. And a lot of times people don't understand that because they don't know what goes on in the background. And so they think, okay, well, they're just uncooperative. Like, here's the reality. All the banks suck. There's not one bank that's better than the other. Now, depending on the day you ask me or my office, we might tell you that we like this bank a little bit better, but ultimately they all suck. And it's just a matter of knowing exactly what to do, the documents that you need to send, and how to move it along. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Because if you provide everything, they will move it along. Now, every short sale is different. So you're going to have times where it's going to be stuck at a certain place where there's a bad value, or there's a situation where the bank's requesting, more details, or whatever the situation is. But ultimately, it has nothing to do with the circumstance or the market or anything like that, because the guidelines are still the same, regardless even if the market's the best it's ever been. Now, I will tell you the biggest challenge that most investors and agents come across with short sales is price, like hands down. That's the number one reason why short sales fail, because they don't know how to work around a bad value. And at the end of the day, the bank will always compare their losses. So if they're in foreclosure and they're saying, okay, well, let me weigh short sale versus foreclosure. If we actually just foreclose on that asset or that house, they're always going to take the better option. But it's your job as the professional, and not you as the investor, but the one that's working the actual deal, to show them why it's better to just sell it to that investor or to that buyer that's currently, wanting to purchase at that price. Because value is subjective, right? It's an opinion. So they pay for an opinion. And so if it's our opinion that it's not worth that much, and at the end of the day, if it's not going to finance and it has to go to an investor, why shouldn't it go to you, as opposed to them taking the house back and selling it to an investor anyway on the open market? See what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
it's all about the way you present it to the bank.
Right. So in short, basically, it's not about the market or the seller or the investor. It's more about working with somebody like yourself that actually knows what the process is involved, and being
Absolutely.
able to make it happen. So that's awesome. Yeah, so I had some, let's see, other questions here. I get asked a lot, again, going back to, given that this is just the area you work in.
Yeah.
Something I know you said on Max's podcast is that when you're working with these sellers that are in these situations, they don't want to sell, they just have to. And I found that really interesting because, again, I've worked with a lot of pre-foreclosures, and being an investor, obviously everybody's got their opinions on real estate investors and exactly who we're going after. And I kind of just wanted to, get your insight from your side of it. I've always told people that it's like, obviously there's a lot of people that I speak to when I'm cold calling or mailing to, they get hyper offended by it, and they just cuss me out. But then it's everybody that I've bought a house from that has been in pre-foreclosure at the end of the day has basically wanted to give me a hug. And
Yeah, they're grateful.
and it's just, and so that's why I try to explain to people, and
Yeah.
I just like to hear your insight on that to a degree.
Well, here's the deal. So a lot of people, and I talk a lot about the different motivating factors, and I have a course that is available now, and I talk really in detail of understanding what's motivating these distressed sellers so that you don't talk them out of selling it to you. And it's not even just in a short sale, because the deals that you worked, I'm assuming, weren't short sales, right? You just bought them in a pre-foreclosure.
I bought a quad that one of the properties that I own was not a short sale. The other one was like the short sale got rejected, but then it was a back and forth forever. And then it was like a real time short sale where one of the mortgages that the guys had, like the last minute, came up with an extra $15,000 worth of charges that they were trying to charge him for. And it was basically either you're selling it to us without these $15,000 worth of charges right now, or it's going to be sent to auction and you're not going to get any of what he owes you. And so they came back and they were like, okay, just take that. So that, I mean, technically a short sale, but not in the sense of,
going through the process.
The full process.
Yeah.
No.
Well, the reason why I say that is because understanding how to work with these distressed sellers is not just focusing on short sales, even though, that is very common. It's really understanding what's getting them to understand your value as the investor of selling it to them, as well as, just not letting it go to foreclosure. So the reason why I say that they have to work with you, they don't want to, is because the majority of these pre-foreclosure sellers or these distressed sellers, they are wanting to keep their house at all costs. They've done multiple loan modifications. And if you don't know how to overcome those objections on why loan mods are really terrible and there's nothing beneficial to the homeowner, it's only to the bank, or why a deed in lieu is not beneficial, or why, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't know how to overcome that, a lot of times we try to sell ourselves or our product. And even though we see the value of like, hey, I can help get you out of foreclosure by closing quick, maybe that's not what's driving them. So now they're like, you know what? I don't want to leave quick. No. So you're talking them out of it because you're pitching what's important to you or what you think is the value instead of what they think is the value. So I talk a lot about the motivating factors for these homeowners, which are time, money, or credit. And so I really dive into those because if you can't identify that, you will never get a contract. Because a lot of these investors are just like, hey, come on, I can close quick. And sometimes that's not what's going to get them to the closing table. Ultimately, like you said, you might get some people that will curse you out, but once they understand what you're doing for them, then they're the most grateful clients. I mean, once you change their perspective on the reality, not what they want, or their false reality, but the actual reality of the situation, yeah, you're going to get that every time, where they're hugging you and just so grateful that you saved them from foreclosure. And yes, you're going to make money, right? Like ultimately, we got to make money to pay the bills, but that's not about it. Like, that in that situation, you're helping these sellers get out of foreclosure and move on with their lives.
Absolutely. And that's, that's certainly completely parallel with, the vast majority, whether it's wholesalers, rehabbers, whatever, of all the investors that I know, that I watch and try to learn from, that are just crushing it. Every single one of them seems to say the same thing. And that's, don't think of yourself as an investor. You're a problem solver. You're trying to go in and help them. And that's
solution oriented. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And a lot of that just, as you clearly have fully embraced, is so much of it's just education and knowing what the hell you're talking about and experience at the end of the day. So,
and honestly, awesome. If you just spend time to build rapport and not sell, but like you said, educate, like I say that all the time.
Yeah, you said educate, not sell.
9 times out of 10, it doesn't matter if your offer is even lower. You have built rapport and they feel so comfortable. Like, and I'm sure I said this on Max's podcast, but I've had the same investor refer, like I've had 4 different investors refer the same client. And the one that ended up, I remember the client was like, no, I have to work with him. I'm like, why him? Oh, because, he spent time with me. I feel comfortable with him. Like I have a relationship with him. And every single time that works. The other ones that are like, hey, Nicole, see what you can do. It's like, okay, I don't even remember his name. That's the difference.
Right.
So,
yeah, what you definitely said on Max's podcast is educate, not sell. And you also said do the right thing and money will come. And I very much believe in that. In a lot of different ways in life. So I can fully appreciate that that's what you're doing, and you're certainly helping people. And that's probably one of the most beautiful ways to make money is to basically help people. And of course, you're going to see abundance in your life because of
Absolutely.
that. Given everything that you said, I'm pretty sure that everybody that's going to watch this is going to certainly want to learn more about you and find out how they can learn more from you. I know you said you wrote a book and that you also have an education program out right now. Can you tell me a little bit about that and tell everybody where they can tune in to find more about that other than Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote a book last year. It's Short Sales Uncensored. It's on Amazon. I I did Audible. I released this year, so you can get it on Audible as well as the actual hard copy. And I wrote the book primarily because I used to teach classes, and everyone was like, I want you to elaborate on it. And it's still not even, it just kind of touches the surface. So over time, as I've been teaching classes and doing podcasts and things like that, I've been constantly approached about doing some type of educational course to really dive into the day-to-day things. And so I spent the last 6 months putting this video course together, and the course is for investors and for realtors. So the idea is that once you take this course, that whether you're wanting to do short sales on your own, or if you're just trying to understand the process of how to work with these sellers, what goes on in the background, so you're more educated when you're trying to get those under contract, as well as partner with the right people to have a whole other pipeline. Because most investors write off these no equity deals because they're like, I can't make money, right? They're so hyper focused on equity. So understanding that in being that mindset of being solution oriented, that you never say no to a lead, that you try to figure out every single avenue, and maybe not specializing in short sales where you're just focused on no equity deals, but having a solution for every single one so that your cost per lead goes down. Because it's very expensive, and you guys work really hard to get those leads and build that rapport. And the worst thing that can happen is that it falls apart because you just don't know what to do with it. So a lot of it was just being able to, so we do role playing where you guys can see the conversations that we're having with the sellers. And my office manager, she kind of throws, Stephanie, she's awesome. She's a very educated seller, because I'm like, okay, make it a little bit easier, because she's like, nope, I'm going to throw everything at you. I'm like, okay, whatever. But she basically just throws all these objections at me, and I'm going right back, showing the investors and the realtors how I talk to these homeowners. And I mean, I used to cold call. Before I was 100% referral, I was on the phone calling these pre-foreclosure leads, and I loved it. I mean, I'm still a salesperson, so I love the chase, So every once in a while, I'll still get on the phone just to, let me see if I can do it. But yeah, so I kind of go over all of that. We do role playing. I go over all of the specific documents, everything that you're going to need to be able to process the short sale. I go over all of the common things that can go wrong, and then dive in on how to fix it. So it's a lot, and it's probably more information that you'll ever want to know, but you'll at least have a full understanding. And I did it so that people can give the right advice. I mean, honestly, even the reason why I started teaching and giving back to the real estate community was because I was tired of realtors and investors telling these homeowners that they're screwed, that they could not, they didn't have any other options, or they didn't know how to help these homeowners, because you guys are on the front line. You guys are the ones that are the face-to-face with these homeowners that are losing their homes, specifically, investors, and of course, real estate professionals that screw it up and get these homeowners foreclosed on because they don't know what to do. So that's what the course is. It's, I think, about 3 hours worth of videos that you guys can do. And then at the end of it, you will feel so comfortable on how to build rapport. Like after you take the course, you can go appointment next day. And then, so anyways, so get the course, it's thessqueen.com, and it has all the information, and you can buy it there. And then the book is Short Sales Uncensored, and it's on Amazon.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time again, and I'm excited to probably listen to the Audible of your book and learn more, because like you said, one of the worst parts of investing is talking to some of the people that you just don't know how to help. And I get that all the time. It's just like, it sucks because I can just hear them. I know it's just like, I wish I could do something for you, but like you said, I just don't have the education, but now I know where to get it. And so does everybody else. So I appreciate it. Other than that, is Instagram the best way to keep up with you?
Yeah, we're putting as much content as we can. We just launched the YouTube channel, so we'll be putting out vlogs. But yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, and then we'll post all the links.
Awesome, perfect. Well, I appreciate your time again, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. And keep crushing it. You're doing awesome.
Thanks, appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.